Today I want to talk a little bit about my practice session and what I do in an hour practice session or in a 10-minute practice session and how I break it down. In my opinion, how you spend your practice time is probably one of the most important things that you can pay attention to when trying to learn the banjo, and that's why I want to talk about it today. Maybe help you cut out some noodling time in your banjo practice to help you progress faster. My practice session, if I know I'm going to practice for an hour, I actually break that hour down into 15-minute increments. And then sometimes I'll even break down those 15-minute increments into smaller increments of 5 or 7 minutes apiece. Now you might ask yourself, why would you break it down into those increments like that for? If you know that you've got a set amount of time to work on something, say you've got 5 minutes to work on forward rolls, and that's all the time you've got to work on it, and then you've got to move on to something else, then that'll make you concentrate more on that forward roll or whatever you may be practicing during that time period. It kind of shrinks everything down to saying, I've got to do these 8 things and I got an hour to do it in. Well, that's a whole big ball of stuff you've got to work on. To where if you say, okay, I've got to work on this forward roll and I've got to do it for 5 minutes, and then I've got to work on the forward reverse roll and I got to do that for 5 minutes, and then I've got to work on this. It compartmentalizes everything into more digestible practice habits. And I will also go as far as to setting a timer on my phone and watching it and knowing when it gets to a certain time, okay, it's time to move to something else. I'm gonna let you know that these 15-minute increments, and I got 4 of them, they're not always the same. They're not the same every day. They may change depending on what I need to work on, or I may combine 2 and make a 30-minute session. Like if there's a song or something I need to work on, I'll combine the last 2 15-minute segments into a 30-minute segment to work on something particular. But generally I'll break them down into 15-minute segments and I'll work on different parts of my game. I usually start off with a roll. Just something to get my hand going, right? Nothing big. Maybe I'll switch a roll up, right? Just to get it going. And I'll practice that. Now what I'll normally do is when I'm practicing rolls, I'll usually give them 4 to maybe 5 minute piece, and I usually practice them every time I practice. And generally what I'll do is see how long I can go and do that particular roll for. So if I can usually go the whole 4 minutes and say an alternating thumb roll, if I can do it for 4 minutes, I'll just sit there and do that for 4 minutes, right? Then I'll switch to forward reverse roll. I'm not really working with the metronome on these. When I do it, I just kind of am just getting my hands used to doing that. I work with metronome stuff later on, but generally I don't do this with the metronome. It's just kind of getting my fingers going and getting everything working. Now that I've got my fingers rolling, and that's the first 15 minutes, the second 15 minutes I'll usually work on something utility-wise, like say scales or changing chords on the banjo, getting from here to there, going from this one to that one. The second 15 minutes is where it goes awry, because some days I may feel like I want to work on scales. Some days I want to work on changing chords up the neck, you know what I'm saying? Generally the second 15 minutes is wrapped into something that I'm trying to learn or get nailed down, like scales, something utility wise, scales, chord positions, changing from chord to chord kind of deal. That's usually my second 15 minutes is working on something like that. And then in my third 15 minutes, after I've warmed up, after I've gone through some utility stuff, I will generally try to play stuff I already know for the next 15 minutes, just to kind of strengthen those abilities. Something I always have to play in a practice session. I don't have to play it at breakneck speed because I generally do that once a month to see how much faster I can get on it. But I generally play it pretty slow during this section, and I play different things that I know: Roll My Sweet Baby's Arms, Cripple Creek. Some of the songs I really like playing, I try to ingrain them in myself during this third 15-minute phase. And then we get to the final 15-minute section, which is generally learning something new. I'm trying to learn a new song. I'm trying to learn a new solo. I'm trying to learn a new lick. I'm trying to learn a new something new. I'm trying to do the last 15 minutes is completely learning something new, because when I get done practice session, I want that fresh on my brain. I want that to be the last thing I've done. But also, the way this practice session works for me is I break them into 15-minute sessions. So that way, if I sit down on the couch and I've got 10 minutes to practice, well, then I know I can sit down and I can pull out scales and I can practice, just do scales for 10 minutes, just to practice something on the banjo. Or if I want to practice rolls, if I want to sit down for 5 minutes and just, while I'm watching TV, and just go over the rolls, I can sit and watch TV and do that. So that's the main reason I break everything down into 15-minute segments. That way, no matter how much time I've got, I've always got time to do something when I sit down. Because that's the most intimidating thing, is when you sit down, like, I ain't got an hour to sit down, I ain't gonna pick up my banjo. Well, no, you don't. But maybe you got 5 minutes and pick it up and do some rolls, right? Do some forward rolls. Strengthen those memories in your hand of that forward roll, right? All right, guys, I want to thank everybody for watching. I appreciate it. If you enjoyed this, please hit that like button. It helps out tremendously. With that being said, I'm going to go on to the next video.